Welcome to Leading with Love. I'm Cameo and I want to talk about autism today. Autism by definition is a developmental disorder of variable severity that is characterized by difficulty in social interaction and communication and by restricted or repetitive patterns of thought and behavior. I have a younger sister who has autism. She is 29 now. And I have two children that have autism, my son Liam, who is 5, and my daughter Claire, who is 4. When my son was initially diagnosed with autism, I was distraught. I was hysterical. A million thoughts came into my mind. Did I do the wrong thing? Did I eat the wrong thing? Was I paying enough attention to my body when I was pregnant with him? As I'm super upset and hysterical, the evaluator is giving me his diagnosis as well as his recommended hours of therapy. I was sad because I felt like it was my fault. My family has a history of autism. Like, did I do something wrong? The evaluator is constantly reassuring me that it's not something that I did, and there's ongoing research to find out why autism even happens because they still don't know. Also, his pediatrician is telling me that I did nothing wrong, but you can't help but have mommy guilt, I think, sometimes when these things happened. I grew up with a person with autism, so I was very familiar with it. I was very familiar with, her side of the spectrum because it's a spectrum, so all children with autism are different. But I was familiar with autism. But with that came not only knowing how awesome she is, but also her challenges. And all I could think about was the difficulties, the challenges that he would have to overcome. Already being a person of color comes with challenges within itself. Adding autism, all I could think about was his success and what he would do and what his quality of life would be like. Now, it goes without saying that I love my son. Of course, I love my son, and I wasn't disappointed in the fact that he had autism. I just didn't know what his success would look like. I didn't know what preparing him for success would look like. And so that is what was super scary for me. The same with Claire. When she was diagnosed, I had similar feelings because I was worried about success and what that looked like and how do I prepare her for success. With a person with autism that may not take the same path as a neurotypical person, I was wondering what that would look like. How would I best prepare them for success? What would be their strength? What would they gravitate towards so that I could then hone in on those interests so that they could then make a career of this. So these are the things that was going through my mind. And yes, they were toddlers at the time. They were super young when they were diagnosed. But, you think about that. You think about your child's future. You think about their success, and none of us are immortal. So I know that eventually I won't be around. And so I definitely had those thoughts of, okay, what does success look like? What school can I get them into? What can I was thinking all these things, but also thinking about their challenges and thinking, okay, how do I do this? How do I go about making sure that they are successful? And in my mind at the time, it felt daunting because I had no idea, no blueprints. I had no idea what that would look like. Even with growing up with a sister that had autism, I had no idea what my children's experience would be. My son was 3 when he was diagnosed, and my sister was speaking at 3. My son is nonverbal still. He has a lot more words now, but then he was nonverbal. He wasn't saying any words at all. He would mumble mama, but that was about it. And so I was concerned because here he is, he's 3, he's not speaking. How can I get him to speak? How long will it take him to say words? Will he ever say words? Because some people with autism continue to be nonverbal throughout their life. So these were all concerns of mine, and there's a super concentration on speech now at his school, and he's doing super well, so I'm excited about that. But these are real concerns for parents when their child is diagnosed with autism. These were the reasons why I was hysterical and why I was crying and just super, super worried because I had no idea. Also, Liam's case was very different from my first experience with having a child. My firstborn, he did everything super early. He was literally singing ABCs and everything at like 9-10 months. He was super early at walking and everything else. Everything else he did super early. And so that was my first experience. So this was much different. And I was just literally in freak out mode because I wanted to make sure that my baby would be successful and have a great quality of life. Within this being said, I did everything I could to make sure that he went to a school I felt comfortable with, a school I felt was best for him. And within this journey, I've done a lot of research on autism, and I've read a lot of different books, a million things, because I wanted to make sure that I was prepared to give my children the best life. My son being the one that was diagnosed at the time. Some years down the line, I came across a book called Uniquely Human, A Different Way of Seeing Autism. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. It's by Barry M. Prezant with Tom Fields Meyer. And so this is what the book looks like. There's a bit of drawing from my babies, but that's what the book looks like. Within this book, the author talks about the different people with autism that he's come across and the different people with autism that he's worked with, children and adults. There was one story that stuck out in particular that really kind of changed my perspective on autism and parenting, like differences altogether, really. There was this adult that he spoke about, Roz Blackburn. So Roz Blackburn in the book talks about how people stare at her when she jumps up and down and flaps her arms. She points out in the book that it's common to see people doing just what she does on TV when they've won the lottery. The difference between the two is that Roz gets more easily excited than maybe a person that's neurotypical. These are all human behaviors, and we're all human. So if we think of things in this way, then we wouldn't be so quick to judge someone's behavior that has autism or that is different from us. And so after reading this and reading some other things in the book, it really kind of changed my perspective. I was focusing more on the challenges that he would have in his life instead of just focusing on the fact that we all have things that we do. Like, for instance, talking to yourself. A lot of times you're in the house, you're pacing around. If you're thinking about something or trying to maybe crunch numbers in your head, you're saying these things out loud, but you wouldn't necessarily do these things out in public, around other people. And the difference is, neurotypical people, we just are more aware of those things. We are more aware of hiding parts of ourselves that we know aren't the societal norms. My younger sister is literally one of my favorite people because she is herself. She has fun. I have so much fun in her presence because she lets loose. She's not concerned of other people's opinions. She's not concerned of hiding any parts of herself. She's not concerned of like being restricted, and she's just concerned with letting loose and having fun. And I love that about her. I think if we get more in the mindset of this is a human that has differences, rather than, oh, there's a disability here, what do we do, how we act, like, is everything okay? I think we need to get out of that. Growing up with a sister that had autism, I remember in elementary school being on the school bus and kids asking, well, what's wrong with her? Never do that. Never ask what's wrong with a person that has autism. Never ask them, and never ask their parents, siblings, friends. Don't do that. Instead of thinking what's wrong, look at it as this person has differences. Like, this person's doing something. Treat them how you would treat any other person that has a different personality or different behaviors from you. And this is not to diminish what parents go through that have children with autism, where they may have those super late nights because their child doesn't want to sleep or anything of severity. I'm not speaking about those things. I'm speaking solely about treating a human being like a human being. If you're curious, then you can research. If you're curious, then, respectfully maybe ask questions if there's an opening to do so, if the person is okay with that. But treat people with autism like they are people. Too many times I've seen people be hesitant or afraid. I've also encountered on a number of occasions people asking what is wrong. A lot of the time, the behaviors that you see people with autism display are simply to self-soothe. So a neurotypical person might do this by tapping on their pen if they're anxious, or like biting their lip, or maybe even kind of like rocking back and forth. Like sometimes subconsciously, a lot of people do this. So a lot of times these behaviors that you're seeing are simply to help them feel better. On the other side, if you're seeing flapping, or if you're seeing other extreme behaviors, is from excitement or happiness, or sometimes even anxious, or trying to communicate that they are upset. This is particularly true in people that have autism that are nonverbal. A lot of nonverbal people with autism, they will try and communicate their emotions and feelings through gestures. There are things like ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis, that can help people with autism to be more successful in a neurotypical society. However, their strengths need to be highlighted as well, which I love about the school that my children attend. Their strengths are highlighted. They really get to shine in the areas where they are strong. And so that's what we need to be focusing on. For example, my son Liam, one of his strengths is fine motor. And my daughter Claire, one of her strengths is attention to detail. She's very alert. So that's what I love about my little Claire bear. I would suggest that anyone that is curious, or anyone that is affected by autism in any way, meaning if you have a child with autism, or sibling, or friend, or something like that, family member, I would suggest checking out the book Uniquely Human, A Different Way of Seeing Autism. It is a life changer. It taught me so many different things about my children with autism, but I think parenting as a whole, because when you are seeing something that is different, especially as a parent, if you're seeing some type of behavior that's not favorable to you, your first mind is to try and change it. However, we have to look at these things a little bit differently, because our children are little people. They are doing the things that are comfortable for them. But people with autism, embrace them as you would anyone that is different from you. You'll definitely need to use your best judgment, because some people with autism don't like to be touched. Sometimes you can't just go and hug a person with autism, but it's the same with people who are neurotypical. A lot of the times, not everyone just likes to be touched. So use your best judgment, but it's okay to engage. I'm pretty fortunate where my children, they love hugs, they love kisses, they love tickles, they love to play. So my children love to be touched, but not everyone does. So that's okay. There's no need to be super hesitant, or to judge, or to stare. There's no need to do any of those things, because a person with autism is a person. So hopefully I have given you a different perspective. This is just a little bit of information. So hopefully now that I've given you a little bit more insight, you'll take that and want to do more research and find out a bit more about autism. This has been Leading with Love. I am Camille, a person with an opinion, and I invite you to share yours.